Hey everybody, Mike Pfeiffer with Pfeiffer Hobby Supply. Today we're going to do a little how-to video that I recorded a couple of days ago on how I mix plaster, not only for all of this back here, but for around the rocks and how I blend the rocks in and how I mix my plaster, what kind of plaster I use. I've had some questions about that, so let's get into this. Okay everybody, I'm getting ready to do a little more plastering out here in the train room. Everybody knows, I think, how to put plaster cloth down and put newspaper under it or whatever you want to build it up, but I was going to show you how I mix my gypsolite to make it go farther. This is gypsolite. This is what it looks like when you pour it out of the container. And I put it into a sieve because, as you can see, there's some pretty large particles in there, and I think it's a little over, some of those particles are a little over scale for N scale. So I choose to sift some of those out. Once I do that, I'll show you what the final product is, and then I'll show you about, and actually talk to you about putting plaster in it. Okay, I know it's probably a little noisy in the speaker here because I'm standing under air conditioner. It's hotter than blazes here today. Anyway, I have sifted out that size of material. If you look at the sieve, you can see that I've taken an awl and I have punched some holes in it that are slightly bigger because I do want some of it to go through, but I don't want the big pieces to go through. So you can kind of get a comparison right there as to what I let through and what I don't. And there's no science to this, it's just my preference. And you can see that if I shook it long enough, I'd still have particles going through. But this is what I do with this stuff. Boop. That's it. Okay, so I set that aside. Now, let me change hands here. This plaster here happens to be shaper sheet plaster. I don't care what kind of plaster it is. I've used hydrocal, I've used shaper sheet, I've used, I don't know, any of the other 20 plasters they make. And it's not that I prefer this, it just happened to be what I had. But what I do is I add about, maybe 1/3 or even up to a half of whatever I have in the container. I add that much of regular plaster so that when I mix it up, all it does is just allow my plaster mix to go further. In other words, I don't have to buy as much gypsolite, and I've put back in about the same volume of the texture that I've taken out. So next I'm going to just show you a little bit of plastering around some rocks in here. Okay gang, I have got plaster now all the way around to right about there. I also, as you can see, I have some used rocks from the other layout in place. These will be painted over to match colors of the adjoining scenery, or the gray color that I've started out with my rocks here. That's about the color I'm looking for right there. That's a little bit on the dark side, the gray one, but we'll work with that. And I've got unpainted ones. And I did put in this wall. This wall will also be painted because I think they look really hokey unpainted. So that'll be painted some kind of gray, and then there'll be a brown dry brush over the top of that, and then a white dry brush is what I'm intending to do. Now I have one piece of rock down there. I haven't made any determination on the mine up there yet, but today I'm just going to go over a little bit of the plastering that's going to take place along here, because I don't think I've shown you guys exactly how I do it. So I'm going to set up the tripod and maybe do a little, not really fast motion, but just speed it up a little bit so you don't have to be bored to death. But I'm going to plaster in around these rocks here, and then when I get down here, I'll just be plastering on top of the plaster cloth. Okay everybody, I mixed this batch of plaster a little bit thicker. You can kind of see the consistency, I guess. It's kind of like pancake batter, I guess you might say. This is my old crappy mixing brush. I don't put the plaster on with this. As you can see, the bristles are kind of all whacked out on this from all the plaster. But when I get ready to start plastering, and we'll put that down, I always have a butter dish of water handy, because if you have it too thick, then you can thin it down. You may want to put a little bit of water around the rock before you start, because it may allow the plaster to adhere in there better. I'm going to try it dry first, because you can't take the water out once you put it there. But I'm going to do that rock right there. This will probably be a little fast motion, and let me zoom in on it. Okay, one thing I forgot to tell you guys is I always keep handy a couple of smaller brushes to get in the cracks and crevices around the rock. So I have those, and then I have a fairly decent wider brush to put the majority of it on that's been in my water dish. So let's get started. Now I'm going to work on these guys right here, and kind of the same technique. Well, obviously the same technique. And then we'll let it kind of dry a little bit, and I'll give you another shot of these. Okay, and now I just repeat the process going on down this way. You can see where it's unplastered, and go around these rocks as I go. But that's pretty much how I do it. Just add the plaster around the rock. This got a little bit thin on me right here, and I've got a lot of water down here. We could soak that up. In fact, I probably will soak that up with a paper towel, just because I don't want it there right now. And allow this to dry up. But once this dries up, these rocks will blend in there perfectly once they're painted in, and once you put the ground cover, everything will look like it belongs there. So I'm just gonna do around these other rocks here and work my way down that way, and I'll show you when I get that far. Okay, gang, I hope you enjoyed that short video on how I mix my plaster and how I apply it around the rocks and how I apply it over the plaster cloth. So, that's it for today, and as usual, thanks for watching.